evening. Today's panel aims to discuss and analyze the challenges of meeting the needs of diverse learners and learning styles in remote learning due to the effects of COVID-19 on the education system. The new normal has contributed to many challenges that have affected the economic, emotional, mental, and physical realms of citizens and society. Join us today as we explore the effects of COVID-19 and the education system, and in particular on student learning. Our guests this evening are experts from the psychological and sociological fields, and on the panel we have with us today Mr. Shiva Balkaran, Ms. Debbie Turpin, Mr. Ramparas Mahadev, and Mrs. Sati Sahadev. I am Sarah Maraj, and I will be guiding us through our segment today. The first impact of COVID-19 on the education system was the physical closure of schools due to the highly contagious nature of the virus, and this measure was taken on a global level. According to Mohammed Osmand, 1.5 billion students in about 165 countries have been affected by the lockdown of schools and campuses. As a result, schools, colleges, and universities were forced to shift in some way or another to online learning as a replacement for on-site delivery. The Caribbean region was no exception in having to enforce a lockdown on its educational institutions. And according to UNESCO, school closures have left 7 million learners and over 90,000 teachers across 23 countries and territories in the Caribbean sub-region, grappling with a new reality of distance learning. These closures also brought forward another prevalent issue in the Caribbean region: the state of inequity faced by students in various states economically and socially, as it became increasingly obvious that there are challenges faced by some students in accessing the necessary resources to engage in remote learning. Kendall Morgan of CARICOM Today states that COVID-19 has exposed even more the pestering inequalities of educational provision in many of our member states. This also challenges our ability to deliver universal quality education to our citizens. There is now a greater urgency to secure the continued access and participation of children, youth, and adults who live with special education needs and disabilities. I now welcome our first guest, Mr. Shiva Balkaran, who will give us some insight into this issue within our local context of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Balkaran.
Thank you, and I'll be looking at local background of COVID-19. From the data collected at a media conference, the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago states teachers have Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1, synchronous. These students are referred to having both device and internet. There is no visual and auditory content with synchronous teaching. Whereas in Category 2, asynchronous refers to students without access to both device and internet connection, who utilize packages to facilitate learning. Compared to Category 1 students, there is no visual, auditory, and kinesthetic content. In my next point, according to Global Voice 2020, it is recorded that 53.3% of Form 5 students have access to internet connection, which means that only students will be exposed to visual and auditory content. Therefore, 46.7% of the students will not have material, and kinesthetic learners will be at a disadvantage. Thirdly, in a research by Dr. Marina Kalu, 2020, it is stated that an estimated 60,000 students without the necessary hardware or social support to access online education. This will lead to students being demotivated, and it is anticipated that the dropout rate will increase. Going on to my next slide. Right, on pre and post COVID-19, I look at dropout rates existed versus dropout rates anticipated. If we look further into pre and post COVID times, it is anticipated that there will be an increase in dropout rates. Additionally, according to United Nations, pre-COVID-19 already have its challenge when it came to fulfilling the right of an education as well as financial poverty. It was recorded that mid-April 2020, 94% or 1.58 billion learners were affected. Moreover, the UNESCO estimates that 23.8 million additional students may drop out or not have access to school next year. In my next point, with pre and post-COVID, I look at the curriculum where topics were being covered versus curriculum watered down. To accommodate the need of these students without internet connection, most teachers are familiar with the idea of altering the curriculum to make it less complex and easier to learn. Including the changes, for example, like CSEC and CAPE examination paper, subjects that require kinesthetic content, such as phys ed, agri, labs, food and nutrition, are not being taught fully. I thank you, and I now hand you over to the host.
Thank you, Mr. Balkaran. Viewers are reminded that remote learning entails the utilization of online resources in the implementation, delivery, and reception of the school curriculum. And considering the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for remote learning and instruction has abruptly risen. This also contributes to the challenge where there is a severe lack of opportunity to cater to students who possess diverse learning styles, which are comprised of the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic styles. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Debbie Turpin, who will give us a psychological perspective on COVID-19 and its effects on the education system and its stakeholders. Ms. Turpin.
Thank you. The humanistic perspective focuses on the holistic development of the child, which includes cognitive, emotional, and interpersonal skills, catering for diversity in terms of different socioeconomic backgrounds and learning disabilities. The challenge is how to apply humanistic values to build positive teacher-student relationships in a global setting. Maslow, a leader in humanistic psychology, reinforced that when students' needs, for example, belongingness and friendship, are not met, learning can be affected. The challenge here is how to meet students' need for social interaction when activities such as sports and other groups have all come to a halt. Piaget, constructivist, emphasizes learning by doing, where students are active participants. The challenge is how to change teachers' mindset to accommodate a shift from a teacher-centered approach to a student-centered approach. In contrast, behaviorism focuses on observable behavior and behavior modification through rewards and sanctions. On the point of sanctions, the question is, what sanction do we apply for online indiscipline? Only this week as a dean, I have had 3 reported incidences of students using obscene language during online classes. A recent study revealed that online learning is entirely dependent on technological devices. The study further revealed that students from low socioeconomic backgrounds may encounter challenges in this regard. Therefore, there is a challenge for students to get work done. Students may also need more personalized instructions and explanations. Question: which picture represents our education system? Well, let's see. Written in our National Vision 2030, linked to the SDG goals goal 4 for a quality education. Indeed, our vision calls for a quality education system that is accessible and inclusive. Instead, there seems to be inaccessibility and exclusion. Also, the quality of packages may be affected. Dr. Fazal Ali, Teaching Service Commission chairman, stated that the immediate logistical challenge is to guarantee all students have the tools and technology for remote learning. He also emphasized that the infrastructure is soft, not concrete. In ending, let me echo his sentiments by saying, these challenges have exposed how unprepared our country is for digital schooling. Thank you, and back to Ms. Mirage.
Thank you, Ms. Turpin, for sharing your psychological perspective. We will now be joined by Mr. Ramparas Mahadev, who will help us to understand the impacts of school closures and remote learning on the realm of health and family life in education. We welcome you, Mr. Mahadev.
Good afternoon to all. Let's begin with a definition. Health and family life education is an approach to creating or maintaining positive attitudes towards health and well-being in children. It seeks to promote the development of health knowledge and the social and emotional competencies needed for life. HFLE is key to helping children seek out positive opportunities and resist destructive behaviors. Now, let's first look at the general challenges in promoting HFLE in these times. The question is, how do teachers infuse HFLE effectively into the curriculum given the resources that we have now? Before the pandemic, teachers were able to determine and assess the dietary needs of students. Also, teachers were able to assist students in making wise dietary choices by way of classroom engagement. However, now the challenge is, how do we do this on the virtual learning platform? Now let us look at some of the mental health challenges faced by students. The lockdown brought about by the pandemic drastically changed the daily routine, work arrangement, socialization, and educational setting for all our students. Based from previous research, which looked into the impact for academic disruption on students, it is reasonable to assume that students may experience reduced motivation towards their studies, increased pressure to independently learn, and potentially higher rates of dropout. Online learning has significantly increased the screen time for students. This can provide many challenges to one's health that may not yet fully be understood. Let's look at a paper. This paper, entitled Screen Time, Physical Activity, and Mental Health Amongst Urban Adolescents in China, concluded that high screen time and insufficient physical activity increases depression, anxiety, and school life dissatisfaction. Now we will arrive at a question. What is happening to the brain without the stimulation of socialization? Dr. Mahavir, in an article posted in The Guardian, stressed that there is genuine fear expressed in the psychoneurological community that the synaptic connections that facilitate the learning process weakens, and in some children do not really develop unless stimulated by impulses built up during schooling process and socialization. Apparently, the human brain is born with an uncountable number of potentialities which gradually wither and closes off if not stimulated and developed. Now let us look briefly at the diet, nutrition, and physical health aspect and challenge that we face. A balanced diet in the early stage of life plays an optimum role in growth and maintenance of good health status in adolescents. However, COVID-19 has increased poverty and restrictions in the school feeding program, and unfortunately, many students are going hungry and struggling to meet their nutritional needs. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Mahadev. Indeed, there are many issues that affect students and their families, and now we will explore the sociological theories surrounding them. We now welcome Mrs. Sati Sahadev, who will now relate those theories to the situations and conditions faced by our students as well. Mr. Sahadeo?
Good evening. We will begin with the sociological perspectives. Functionalists believe any dysfunction like COVID-19 can be fixed and the system will work smoothly, while Marx argues education justifies and reproduces class inequalities. It does not produce equality of opportunity, as we saw during COVID-19 with education and class division, where some students had no access to devices and received packages from the school because of their socioeconomic status. While it can be argued it is all up to the individual to succeed, cultural deprivation theory blames the working class culture for failure to achieve because of home culture. Some of the same students with high absenteeism rates, the parents who never attended meetings or returned phone calls, are some of the same students who are not collecting packages or participating in the online classes. However, material deprivation is not considered, as some students have to share devices or have none. Many families are trapped in the cycle of poverty, and with COVID restrictions and the loss of jobs, many families delve back into poverty as they do not know when they will get another income. Some parents say the money they will pay in transport to collect packages can be used to buy essential items, as they also lack knowledge of content. Streaming, a form of institutional labeling, where top stream students are treated more favorably in terms of teacher control and access to high status knowledge, while the bottom stream students pick up from the hidden curriculum. Failure is their fault and they cannot access the information. Think about a student who pays for data daily or are collecting packages. They cannot review additional resources as compared to those who have unlimited access and understand how to acquire the information. The stakeholders are saying no child is left behind, but students are not given the same opportunities for education. Another issue is the labels teacher gives students can influence the construction and development of students' identity and self-concept. This in turn can affect their attitude towards school and behavior, their level of achievement in education as well. We have situations where students are present and actively participate in some teachers' online classes, and for others, they are just absent. Willis argues it is a conscious choice by some to reject schooling rather than the teacher's label. Rosenthal and Jacobson argues students internalizes their social interaction with the teacher on basis of these labels, which may result in the self-fulfilling prophecy. Fuller argued students can resist teachers' labels. It is all about the child's determination, motivation, and how he sees himself. Despite the challenges, many students are walking miles to get access to the internet and getting the work completed. In closing, we should ask, is equality and equity available to all students? And what is the ministry doing to ensure students receive the devices donated by various stakeholders? I now hand you over back to Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Sahadeo, and thank you to the panel members this evening who helped us to understand how COVID-19 has impacted educational stakeholders in the psychological, sociological, and the health and family realms. And thank you to your audience for joining us. And it is our hope that this session this evening has been informative and insightful. We do wish you a good evening.